Today's European Union grew out of a very simple idea proposed by the French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman more than 60 years ago, integrating French and German heavy industry to make another war between those two countries impossible. Fast forward to today, and the vision set out in the Schuman Declaration has become the EU single market, the foundation of the European economy. 500 million citizens, worth 11 trillion euros, and 20 years old this year.
Quand vous êtes en Chine ou aux États-Unis, qu'est-ce qui fait que les Européens sont respectés, malgré la crise, malgré les difficultés, malgré la crise de la zone euro avec l'endettement? La seule chose qui fait que nous sommes respectés aujourd'hui, c'est ce grand marché, cette capacité de parler et d'agir au nom de 500 millions de consommateurs qui ont un pouvoir d'achat relativement élevé par rapport aux autres régions du monde, de 22 millions d'entreprises qui sont des petites ou des grandes entreprises très dynamiques et très innovantes.
Michel Barnier is responsible for managing the world's biggest single market, and he's also part of our EPP political family. As the European Commissioner for the Internal Market and Consumer Protection, he has the job of promoting competition, removing distortions, and delivering benefits for all Europeans. The EU is beset by problems and debates about its future, but after 20 years of the single market, Monsieur Barnier thinks it's important to look beyond the politics and focus on how the Union has made itself relevant to the lives of its citizens.
Je pense à la sécurité des produits, par exemple pour la vie quotidienne des enfants avec la qualité et la sécurité des jouets, la sécurité des produits alimentaires qui est maintenant harmonisée, baisser les prix. Par exemple, le téléphone portable, ça coûtait 1,98 € il y a 15 ans la minute. Aujourd'hui, on est à moins de 35 centimes. Donc, on a favorisé pour les transports aériens, pour le téléphone portable, pour la vie quotidienne, grâce à cet espace commun, également l'accès des consommateurs et des citoyens à des produits, à des services moins chers.
The single market is undoubtedly one of the biggest milestones in the construction of European unity. But although we're marking the 20th anniversary this year, the idea of a single market emerged at the birth of the European project. In 1957, 6 countries signed the Treaty of Rome, creating the European Economic Community. The treaty set out the 4 founding freedoms of this common project: the freedom of movement of people, goods, services, and capital. But making those dreams a reality in an ever-growing community of member states turned out to be much more difficult. By the early 1980s, the European project had lost its way following years of social and economic upheaval, and this had created a crisis of confidence in Brussels.
At the time, it was, well, the big word was Eurosclerosis. Many proposals relating to the internal market were on the table, but spread around, not combined together. Each member state had the feeling that negotiations on any of these directives could carry on for ages without any real consequences. There were some good projects around in company law, but they were all disputed for all kinds of good reasons. And basically, the doubt was that, how to regain momentum, basically.
Michel Petit served for almost 30 years in the European Commission, latterly as head of the legal service, but in the 1980s he served as an advisor to 2 of the architects of today's single market. One was Jacques Delors, the visionary president of the European Commission, responsible for a transformation in the morale and political ambition of the EU. The other was Lord Arthur Cockfield, a European Commissioner from Britain, who first identified all the practical barriers to creating a single market and then systematically set about removing them.
He set up the methodology very clearly as well. It was his own idea to list all the possible reasons for controls at borders comprehensively, and you ended up with about 300 or 400 good reasons for controlling at borders, and came up with the sort of almost philosophical theory that if you keep just one of them, you will keep the borders, and therefore you will justify the controls for all the other 300 reasons to control. So you had to remove them all.
The single market was a political project as much as an economic project. What political obstacles arose between the time of establishing the plan and executing the idea?
At the time, most of the decision making in the Council was at unanimity. And of course, it was already well known at the time, but it became even more obvious that if we were staying at unanimity, it would probably take ages, because unanimity produces a strong propension to slow down, block the issues, and in the end go to the sort of lowest minimum common denominator. So to remove unanimity for the internal market, it was not viewed as a sort of purely institutional move towards more federalism or whatever. It was viewed as a tool and purely a technical tool in order to get a better decision making for this internal market program. And from that time, the whole thing accelerated.
The deadline for the creation of the single market was set for the 31st of December 1992. With the milestone Maastricht Treaty having been signed by EU leaders the year before, it seemed as though the European project was newly resurgent. And for the EPP political family, the creation of the single market was good news, not only in itself, but because of what it represented, a commitment to the kind of balanced, inclusive economy at the heart of our political family's ethos.
We have always, as EPP, said that we don't want to have just a free market in Europe, but that we want to build it on the basis of the idea of the social market economy, by the way, stemming from the Freiburg University, where I have studied myself. And the idea is that by creating wealth, you can generate this on both sides, as for businesses, as for consumers, and that's what we have always tried. But sometimes it's difficult to find the right way in the middle. But I think the EPP has always tried seriously to work out the best solution for consumers, for citizens, and for businesses and entrepreneurs.
Andreas Schwab is a German MEP from our group and our spokesman on consumer issues. For him, the 20th anniversary of the single market is a time not only to look back, but to look ahead and seek new opportunities.
I mean, one key element is the digital single market, because consumers tend to buy more and more online. Now there is a certain number of legal issues around this behavior, and I hope that we can get to a real uniform European sales law. That's at the moment underway. Secondly, I think we should have a close look on sectors of a specific cross-border nature. All commercial activities, but also a lot of services playing an important role in the European Union.
In theory, the single market should work just like any other market. Goods and services are on offer, and people can make their choice based on price, quality, and convenience. In practice, though, the single market has worked rather differently. Some member states and some sectors of the economy have been resistant to others coming in and taking a slice of their business. You've also got to think about problems like different languages and different currencies, even in the era of the euro. So if the 20th anniversary of the single market is a cause for celebration, it's also a time for contemplation and to ask, how can we do things better?
Elle a beaucoup progressé, mais non, elle n'est pas satisfaisante. Il y a encore des défauts ou des retards dans la transposition de tous les textes qui font fonctionner cet grand espace économique et social, et ces quatre libertés qui sont fondamentalement les quatre libertés du grand marché européen: liberté de circulation des personnes, liberté de circulation des services, des marchandises et des capitaux. Nous avons encore beaucoup de progrès, et donc je suis très vigilant, y compris quelquefois quand il faut faire des procédures d'infraction, pour que les États membres fassent ce qu'ils ont dit. Ils ont pris des engagements au Conseil des ministres, le Parlement européen est très vigilant, et il faut maintenant que toutes ces directives, notamment la directive services qui intéresse une grande partie de l'économie en Europe, puissent être totalement opérationnelles.
Indeed, the European Parliament is watching developments closely and of course shaping them as the embodiment of Europe's democracy. For the EPP Group, one possibility to make the single market work better is to change the kinds of laws that apply, to move from directives, which give member states some flexibility in implementation, to regulations, which are more prescriptive and more likely to break down the barriers that remain.
For the future, to boost the single market and to use it completely, also especially in this time of crisis, we need to have sometimes, not all over, but in some areas, really one law for the whole market. And that is unfortunately very difficult because member states so far haven't liked it, but we hope that we can have convincing arguments to tell them that for the next 10 years we need a time of regulations in the European Union, of laws stemming from the European Union itself.
If the EU is ever going to regain and retain its global competitiveness to create jobs that its citizens need and to deliver sustainable economic growth, then strengthening the single market will be critical. The question is, do we need more legislation? Do we need less legislation? Do we need simpler legislation? Or do we need to make better use of the legislation we already have? Well, as you can imagine, in a complex and diverse project like the European Union, there are many views about the way forward. But the EPP Group, as Europe's largest and most influential political force, will be leading that debate, using the single market to deliver concrete, everyday benefits for Europe's businesses and citizens alike.